There is a special kind of silence that follows an earthquake. It's not that the world is quiet. No. The screams have stopped. The crumbling has paused. But the air is thick with the dust of what just fell apart. And everyone is holding their breath, waiting to see what remains. I learned about that silence not in some geology textbook, but in a glittering ballroom, surrounded by 200 people in evening gowns and tuxedos. My own sister had just finished tearing me apart, and the man she was going to marry, he looked at me, his face drained of all its color, and he whispered 5 words that would change everything. He said, "You're the judge?" This is not just a story about revenge. This is a story about identity, about the masks we wear, and the terrible price we pay when someone tries to rip them off in front of the world. My name is Elena, and this is the night my sister, Chloe, decided to mock the wrong person. To understand the earthquake, you have to understand the fault line. And our fault line was drawn in childhood. Chloe was the sun, magnetic, vibrant, the life of every party from the time she could talk. She moved through the world with a dazzling smile and an unshakable confidence that everything would simply work out for her. And you know what? It usually did. I was the moon. Quiet, observatory, happiest with a book or a complex puzzle. Where Chloe sought the spotlight, I sought understanding. Where she spoke, I listened. Our parents would joke, "Chloe paints the world in bold colors, and Elena studies the brushstrokes." It was a cute way to say we were different. But as we grew, that difference became a distance. Chloe's world was one of instant gratification, social media fame, fast relationships, chasing trends. My world was built on delayed gratification. Years of study, long hours, building something piece by invisible piece. She called me the ghost. Because to her, my life was invisible. "What do you even do all day, Elena?" Buried in those boring papers, she'd sigh. I never really answered. Not fully. Partly because my work required discretion. Partly because a small, sad part of me had started to believe her narrative. That my quiet path was less than. That her loud, glamorous life was the one that mattered. Then came Mark. Mark was, well, he was a Chloe kind of guy. Successful, charming, with a smile that looked expensive. He was in high-level finance, which always seemed to mean long lunches and vague, impressive stories. They met at a charity gala, Chloe's natural habitat, and within 6 months, they were engaged. The wedding was to be the social event of the season, and I was to be the maid of honor. This is where I need you to picture something. Picture me, Elena, in a chic, understated black dress, sitting across from Chloe in a trendy cafe. She's planning the engagement party. Not the wedding, mind you, the engagement party. A $50,000 preview of the main event. She said, "The theme is Gilded Garden." I'm thinking ice sculptures, a live string quartet, champagne towers, and Elena for your speech. Just keep it light, okay? Maybe a funny story from when we were kids. Nothing too deep. Most of Mark's friends are very important people. They don't want to be bored. I just nodded, stirring my tea. Of course, light and funny. But inside, a cold little stone settled in my stomach. Asterisk, don't be boring, Elena. Don't embarrass me. Asterisk, the message was clear. I was a supporting character in the Chloe show. My role was to smile, look presentable, and not disrupt the glittering narrative. What Chloe didn't know, what Mark didn't know, was that the quiet sister, the ghost, had just been appointed as a judge to the state's appellate court. It was a rigorous, secretive selection process. For months, I'd been undergoing background checks, interviews, a shadow dance of absolute confidentiality. I couldn't tell anyone, not even my family, until the official announcement in 2 weeks' time. So I carried this enormous secret inside me, this quiet, profound achievement, and I carried my sister's casual dismissal beside it. The two things lived in my heart, side by side. One was a shining light of everything I'd worked for. The other was the echoing voice of someone who thought she knew me, but had never really looked. The stage was set. The fault line was stressed. All it needed was one final brutal push. The engagement party arrived. The Gilded Garden was, as promised, breathtakingly over the top. Crystal glinted, orchids dripped from every archway, and the air smelled of expensive perfume and ambition. I wore my maid of honor dress, a silvery gray thing Chloe had picked, and felt like a fish out of water. A very quiet, observant fish. For the first hour, it was fine. Smile, nod, congratulate. Mark was holding court, telling a loud story about a golfing trip with a celebrity. Chloe was glued to his arm, beaming. I circulated, hearing snippets of conversation. Mark's a legend. The deal he just closed? Monster. Another voice would say, Chloe landed the big one. That ring is insane. Then it was time for the speeches. Mark's best man went first, full of body jokes and tales of Mark's legendary negotiation skills. The crowd roared. Then it was my turn. My heart hammered against my ribs. I walked to the microphone, the spotlight warm on my face. I looked out at the sea of expectant, slightly tipsy faces. I saw Chloe, her smile a tight, warning curve. Keep it light. I began. I told a short, cute story about Chloe trying to cut my hair when we were 7. Polite laughter. I said she'd always had a bold vision. More laughter. I was hitting the light and funny notes. But then, I made a mistake. A human mistake. I looked at my sister, and for a fleeting second, I saw past the bride-to-be to the little girl I used to build blanket forts with. My voice softened. But what I admire most about Chloe, I said, deviating from the script, is her fearless heart. She loves with her whole self. And Mark, seeing that love reflected back at her, it's a beautiful thing. I wish you both a lifetime of not just glamour, but of genuine, deep happiness. It was a 30-second moment of sincerity. In a night of glitter, I'd offered a small, plain stone of truth. The applause was kind. I stepped down relieved. I thought it was over. I was so wrong. Chloe took the microphone. Her smile was wider now, dazzling. Thank you, Ellie. She used my childhood nickname, the one I'd asked her not to use in public years ago. A little pinprick. That was so sweet. She turned to the crowd, a conspiratorial glint in her eye. My big sister, everyone. Always the serious one. I have to tell you a quick, real story she left out. The room's attention snapped to her. My blood ran cold. So, Chloe chirped, her voice dripping with playful mockery. When we were teenagers, I was desperate to set Elena up on a date. She was always hiding in her room with her law books. Yes, she was like that even then. The crowd chuckled. My face began to burn. I finally convinced her to come to a pool party. And bless her, she shows up in a full-on, one-piece swimsuit with a skirt attached. I'm talking like something our grandmother would wear. Raucous laughter now. I stood frozen, the silver dress feeling like a cage. Chloe was on a roll, basking in the laughter. And then, this is the best part, she brought a book. To a pool party. She sat in a corner reading The Principles of Contract Law, while everyone else was having fun. The room was in stitches. Mark was chuckling, shaking his head as if to say, asterisk, oh, that Elena. Asterisk, I could feel every pair of eyes on me. The quiet, boring, frumpy sister. The punchline. But Chloe wasn't done. She put a hand on her hip, the microphone catching her every word. And that's kind of been her whole life, you know? We call her the ghost because she just floats through, nose in a book, missing out on everything real. I love her, but sometimes I think her biggest achievement is her collection of highlighters. She laughed, a beautiful, tinkling sound that cut through me like glass. Seriously, Mark's friends here are running companies, making deals, and my sister's still trying to figure out paragraph subsection B, clause whatever. The laughter was deafening. It wasn't gentle teasing anymore. It was a public evisceration. She was reducing my life's work, my passion, my intellect, my very identity, to a pathetic joke, to highlighters, to a frumpy swimsuit. The cold stone in my stomach turned to molten lead. I didn't look at the crowd. I looked only at Mark, at his face, crinkled in amusement at my expense. And then something shifted in his expression. The laughter around him died down slightly as my silence stretched. I wasn't crying. I wasn't running. I was just standing there, utterly still, my eyes locked on him. And in that stillness, he saw something. Something that didn't match the caricature Chloe was painting. His smile faltered. His eyes, previously glazed with champagne and schadenfreude, focused on me with a dawning, sharp intensity. He was a man who dealt with power for a living, and in my absolute, silent stillness, he wasn't seeing a ghost. He was seeing a glacier, immovable, deep, and cold. The crowd felt the shift. A hush started to fall. Chloe, sensing her audience slipping away, tried to reclaim it. "Oh, don't be mad, Ellie. It's just a joke. You know we all love our little legal eagle." But Mark wasn't listening to her. He took a half step forward, his champagne flute forgotten in his hand. His eyes were wide, scanning my face as if for the first time. The color began to drain from his tanned cheeks, leaving a sickly, pale hue. His lips parted. The world shrunk to the space between us. The gilded garden, the watching eyes, my sister's triumphant smirk, it all faded into a blur. All that existed was his terrified, dawning realization and the 5 words he breathed into the sudden quiet, not to Chloe, but directly to me. "You're the judge," he whispered. But the microphone picked it up. A soft, thunderous confession. The silence I mentioned at the beginning? This was it. That thick, choking dust of a collapsed world. 200 people didn't understand the question, but they understood the terror in his voice. They saw the groom-to-be looking at the mocked sister, like she'd just pointed a gun at him. Chloe's smile was plastered on, confused. "Mark, what are you talking about? Judge of what?" "Her book club." She forced a laugh, but it echoed hollowly in the quiet room. Mark didn't even glance at her. His eyes were pinned on me. I finally moved. I took a small, deliberate step toward the microphone he still held loosely. I didn't grab it. I just stood close enough for my voice to be heard in the dead silence. "Yes, Mark," I said, my voice clear and calm, a stark contrast to the theatrical drama of moments before. It was my courtroom voice. The voice I used when the facts needed no embellishment. "I am." The Senate confirmed my appointment to the 7th Circuit Appellate Court this afternoon. The official press release is tomorrow. I let my gaze sweep slowly over the crowd, then back to my sister, whose face was now a mask of bewildered shock. The case load is heavy. It involves reviewing some very complex financial rulings. I paused, letting my eyes return to Mark. In fact, I believe one of the first cases on my docket involves the appeal of State versus Argent Capital. I've been reviewing the case file all week. The details are quite intricate. Mark's champagne flute slipped from his fingers, shattering on the marble floor. The sound was like a gunshot. He didn't flinch. He just stared. Argent Capital. That was his firm. That was his case. A civil suit that had been quietly escalating into a criminal fraud investigation. A case that would now, on appeal, land squarely on the desk of the woman his fiancé had just humiliated in front of the entire city. Chloe looked from Mark's shattered expression to my calm one. The pieces were not connecting in her world of gilded gardens and champagne towers. What is happening? "Elena, what is he talking about?" I turned to her then, and I allowed just a fraction of the pain I felt to show in my eyes. Not anger. Not yet. Just a profound, weary disappointment. "He's talking about the real world, Chloe. The one you think is so boring. The one with consequences." I looked back at Mark. "You should probably call your attorneys. Tonight." Then I turned and I walked. Not with a dramatic flourish, but with a steady, deliberate pace. Through the parted crowd, through the ruins of the gilded garden, out into the cool night air. The earthquake was over. Now came the reckoning. The fallout was swift and quiet. There was no screaming match, no physical confrontation. The real revenge was not something I had to orchestrate. It was a natural consequence, set in motion the moment Mark's worst professional nightmare collided with his fiancée's personal cruelty. The wedding was canceled, of course. Mark's first priority was damage control on a case that was now a ticking time bomb. He couldn't have a judge who held his professional fate in her hands sitting in his family pew. My mere existence on that bench was a conflict of interest so severe his lawyers likely had a panic attack. He withdrew from the case, from the firm, and from Chloe, all within 72 hours. Chloe called me, of course. First it was tears and rage. How could you not tell me? You ruined my life. Then it was pleading. You have to recuse yourself from that case, Elena. For me. For family. Finally, it was a cold, bitter silence. I did recuse myself from State versus Argent Capital. Not for her. For the integrity of the court. But the damage to Mark's reputation was irreversible. The legal community is small. The story of why he scrambled away from his own case spread in hushed, serious tones. Not as gossip, but as a cautionary tale. His high-level finance world crumbled. He moved to another state a few months later. As for Chloe, she lost more than a fiancé. She lost her narrative. The story of the dazzling son who had it all, it was over. People in our social circle now looked at her with a mix of pity and distaste. She had shown a vicious, shallow heart at that party, and the city's elite, for all their own faults, have a low tolerance for that kind of stupidity, especially when it backfires so spectacularly. The invitations slowed. The spotlight moved on. My relationship with my sister is the fault line that may never heal. We speak on holidays. It is polite and empty. The love is still there, buried under mountains of hurt and broken trust, but it's like a fossil, a shape of what once was. So, what is the moral of this story? Is it that quiet people win? Is it that you should never underestimate the sister you mock? It's more nuanced than that. The revenge was not in my power as a judge. It was in the collision of two worlds, Chloe's world of surfaces and the real world of consequences, which I happened to inhabit. My revenge was simply living my authentic, quiet, powerful life. Her mockery didn't break me. It revealed her. And in doing so, it revealed the fatal cracks in the glittering world she had built. The true lesson is about respect. Respect for the paths others choose, even if you don't understand them. Respect that forbids you from using someone's heart as material for a punchline. And a lesson about identity: never let someone else's shallow story of you make you forget your own true title. Whether that title is sister, friend, artist, or judge. Chloe tried to introduce me to a room as a ghost. And Mark, in his terror, introduced me for who I truly was. In the end, the only person shocked by the revelation was the one who had never really seen me at all.